My name is Peter Olsen, and I'm going to be talking about some considerations in cyber deterrence. This isn't going to be an exhaustive talk. Long books have been written about the subject. I'm going to hit only a few high points. Here's what we're going to talk about. If you look at the top of the slide, you'll see a shaded bar. You can follow the moving dot in the shaded bar, and that will tell you where we are in the course of the talk. Let's start with the definition of cyber attack. A cyber attack is an attempt to subvert computer systems to attain a physical result. You want to attain a physical result because you're using a cyber attack in warfare, and it's physical results that force the enemy to do what you want. Cyber war is going to be defined as warfare in which cyber attacks are used. Cyber attacks don't change the nature of warfare. They're just a new means of conducting it. What was Stuxnet, and what did it mean? Stuxnet was a virus that was designed to attack the centrifuges at Iran's Natanz nuclear refining plant. It was probably an act of war because it caused physical damage, although the laws of war are a little bit murky at that point. And Stuxnet subsequently escaped into the wild. Now, this means that it is still roaming the internet, attacking SCADA systems. It also means that there are reports that some third parties have used it to develop new weapons. Those new weapons may actually pose more damage to us than the benefit we got from the original attack on Iran's centrifuges. The big thing is that Stuxnet demonstrated that cyber weapons can cause physical effects. Now, if an attacker is going to justify an attack, he's got to do three things. Rational, the attack's got to be worth the cost he puts into it. Operational, he has to have a means to do it. And political, it has to advance his ends. Now, we assume the attacker to be rational. That's going to be important later on. And we assume the decision is based only on his beliefs. It's what he believes that matters, not necessarily what the defender does. Now, what is deterrence and how do you get it? Deterrence is the art of having someone else not do what you want them to not do because they want to do it. You can think of it as our enemies view restraint as the best option for them. The meme for deterrence is that really what you want to do? And there's two ways to have deterrence by denial and deterrence by punishment. Deterrence by denial is passive. It occurs when the attacker believes that the system is just going to cost too much to attack than the benefit he will get from a successful attack. The meme for deterrence by denial is, hit me as hard as you can, it still won't hurt. Now, deterrence by denial has some criteria. First, it depends on the properties of the system. The properties of the system have to be so formidable that the attacker won't think it's worth his while to conduct an attack. And they could be too secure, they could be too robust, the system could be too resilient. And the advantage of deterrence by denial is it is what it is. It doesn't cause the defender to take any new actions. It doesn't cost the defender anything after he's designed and implemented the system. But there can be catastrophic results if deterrence by denial fails, and the failure may never be detected. I have an example of that in a few slides to come. Now, deterrence by punishment, that means when you are going to respond with such a retaliation that it makes the cost of the attack too much to justify the benefit. It's the meme of that is, if you hit me, I'll knock your block off. Now, deterrence by punishment has a couple of criteria. It depends upon the attacker's belief about the cost and benefit. It implicitly assumes that the attacker is rational, otherwise he wouldn't be able to decide that the cost of your retaliation overwhelms the benefit of his success. And deterrence by denial fails for two reasons. Irrational opponents, if you have someone that believes the next step in God's plan is to provoke a cataclysm, he's not going to be deterred, and different assumptions. For example, before the attack on Pearl Harbor, the Japanese assumed that the United States would be unwilling to go to war because we're such a pacifist and weak nation, and they decided that we'd sue for a negotiated peace right soon after the attack and leave them a free hand in the Far East. That was probably the most costly misassumption in the history of mankind. Now, cyber deterrence is just deterrence applied to cyber weapons. We want to stop people from using cyber weapons. We want to convince them that their restraint in using cyber weapons is worth more to them than the benefit that they would accrue from a successful attack. Now, two things. Number one, a response to a cyber attack need not be another cyber attack. The doctrine, U.S. military doctrine about deterrence, allows the U.S. to conduct any deterrence they want. And in fact, it is reported that in 2005, the U.S. in fact did use a drone strike to kill an ISIS hacker, and it's known that the Israelis used an air attack to destroy a building in which some Hamas hackers, from which that building, the Hamas hackers had been conducting an attack. There's a little issue about that because the Israelis had said that they had already forestalled the attack, and the question is, if they've stopped the attack, was it proportional and justified to destroy the building and kill some of the people inside it? Now, cyber deterrence by denial, again, it is caused by the properties of the system. The system is so secure, so hardened that it is not worthwhile to attack. Cyber deterrence, again, has the benefit of requiring no action by the defender, but it risks catastrophic failure due to confirmation bias. And confirmation bias is pretty simple. It's just the tendency to believe evidence that supports our prior beliefs. And you can see how that affects people. People think they're doing a good job. They consider themselves as competent. And so they interpret the evidence of the operation of their systems as confirming that. And they believe the operations of their systems are working right because they designed and built them. And the logic of catastrophe is really simple. I know how to build secure systems, and I know how to operate them properly. I built this system, and I'm operating it properly, and therefore the system is secured. Well, that's not always the case. In the Second World War, the Germans had a crypto system called Enigma, which they believed was secure. They believed it was so secure that they ignored operational evidence that it had been cracked, and they even ignored the reports of a spy who was located in the United States Signals Intelligence Organization. Unfortunately for them, it wasn't secure, it was broken. The Allies read their traffic all during the war, and estimates are that it shortened the war for 1 to 2 years, and it was critical in winning the Battle of the Atlantic, which kept Britain fed and supported our invasion of Normandy and eventually the victory in the European War. Now, deterrence by punishment has, again, the method is to make or to impose such a response on the attacker that it overwhelms the benefit he might gain from a successful attack. And there are three factors in this. Is the attack worth a response? Who was the attacker? And what retaliation is appropriate? Is the attack worth the response is pretty straightforward. You can look at the physical effects and say, well, perhaps would it be worth a response if it had been carried out by conventional means, an airstrike, a missile, or something like that. Now, you want to consider whether responding would reveal sources and methods. This is particularly true if you intercept the attack before it actually gets to results in physical effects, giving away the fact that you could detect the attack before it got its physical effects. It gives an opponent, gives the attacker some information about what your capabilities are. And you want to know if the response is likely to escalate. Is it going to result in a tit for tat exchange where each of you tries to outdo the other? And could the attack, could your response possibly escape into the wild? Uh, Perhaps damage third parties, or as Stuxnet has done, or is it, as it has been reported for Stuxnet, even be used by third parties to make more formidable weapons? Now, the next question is, can you identify who carried out the attack? Most kinetic weapons come with a return address. You can trace the trajectory, or you may get identifiable pieces of shrapnel. Uh, Now, in cyber attacks, attribution may not be a problem. The attacker may have conducted the attack in such a way that you know who he is because he wants to show you that he has this capability. Consider it a warning shot across the bow. But if the attacker is not known, that can present a problem. Uh, Most attacks are designed not to be readily identifiable, and the path to an attack may be quite complex. Uh, Attackers can use third-party networks, uh, can uh, can attempt to pass themselves off as innocent third parties under a false flag. Now, a question with neutrals is that neutrals are forbidden to use their territory to support the operations of combatants. And what happens when an attacker uses a neutral network? Is the neutral, what responsibilities does he have? Does the neutral have the responsibility of detecting attack? Or even more, does the neutral have the responsibility of trying to thwart the attack, to keep the attacker from using his facilities, as would be required in most other circumstances by the laws of war? Finally, is attribution worthwhile? If the way you discover and identify attacks is by having instruments placed deep within the attacker's software systems or computer systems, then you may not want to let them know that you have in fact discovered who they are at all, because that may give away the tools that you have in there, which could be much, much more valuable than the benefit you gain by attribution of the attack. And finally, what retaliation is appropriate? Cyber deterrent retaliation requires three things. It must be immediate. You don't want to let it wait until it looks like a new attack. The obscure historical fact for the day today is that in the First World War, one of the causes was that Austria waited too long to respond to an attack that Serbia made on it. And by the time they got around to it, the rest of Europe thought it was a new attack. And we know what resulted. The response must be necessary. Diplomacy or peaceful sanctions must not be sufficient to solve the problem. If you're going to respond with retaliation, military retaliation, cyber retaliation, then you can't have another way of easily solving it. And the response must be proportional. As we said, the response need not be cyber. It could be any way of responding, but the response must be proportional to the damage. Again, we talked about the Israeli attack on the building, the Hamas building in the Gaza Strip. Was that proportional because no damage had been done? The Israelis had stopped the attack before it could have any damage. Another example, if a cyber attack took down a small system at a military base, perhaps a logistics system at a small base, would it be proportional to bring down a large electric grid, which could result in significant damage and might kill hundreds of people? Probably that would not be considered proportionate. Now, one caveat about proportionality is that stronger people, stronger nations, usually have more influence when it comes to judging that. Thucydides caught that pretty nicely in his book, The Peloponnesian War. The strong do what they can, the weak do what they must. And that applies to cyber war as well. Finally, summary. Attacks are caused, cyber attacks are intended to cause physical damage. Cyber war is a new means of war, not a new form of war. Deterrence is in the mind of the attacker, and cyber deterrence is difficult. Okay, Thank you very much for listening to my talk. I appreciate your time and attention. And please contact me at that email, pcolsen@gmail.com, for a copy of these slides or for a set of references upon which I base them. Thank you. Have a good day. Bye.